thank you for joining me in the Diversity Innovation Group today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and thank you for having me. It's most kind. It's on this wonderfully warm day, hence the lack of jacket. So my apologies. But
An absolute.
it was just too hot to put the jacket on. To be fair.
I was going to say, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, and absolutely no worries. I'm wearing like the thinnest dress that I own for the exact same reason. So no worries whatsoever. So why don't we start by kicking off and maybe telling us a little bit more about yourself, introduce yourself to the group.
My name's Dan Sodergren. You can Google that. In fact, I think you could, even now, I think you might be able to Google Dan the Marketing Man from about 6 years ago, that I was called that for a very long time. And so
nice ring to it.
Yeah, I think people thought so, and so it was picked up, and I had some SEO behind it, and you could use that. I've not typed it in for many years, so I don't know. Anyway, best thing to do, type in Dan, and then second name is Sodergren. So Dan Sodergren. I am half Swedish, half Jamaican. I don't know why, but no one ever sees the Swedish part. But there we go. That's just life. And so yeah, so half Swedish. So Dan Sodergren, or Sodergren, or Odergrim, or it is lots of different names. Anyway, best thing, come and Google me and find out what I do. I have the joy of being a tech. Well, I'm called a tech futurist. I don't think it's necessarily a compliment, but the BBC like to call you something. So so tech futurist and then digital marketing expert is what I'm called on the BBC and other things. And as I always do like to joke, tech futurist is just someone who does stuff really early, and then if I was a millionaire, I'd be called a millionaire. I called a tech futurist instead. So there you go. That should tell you something. So I tend to do stuff very, very early on the first hype curve, and most probably don't have enough money to keep it going until you make loads and loads of cash out of it. So I had an augmented reality company about 12 years ago. So and a hemp company actually. I made everything out of hemp. So hemp clothing, hemp oil, hemp cosmetics, trying to save the world. And that was about 25 years ago. I think we started that. So from university. So yeah, that was. So CBD, as you guys will now know it, as the young people now know it. Yeah, we did those things 25 years ago. So once again, a little bit early in the marketplace is the thing. And that's my first bit of advice to anyone is, if you're starting your own business, is just read the markets more than go with your gut. And I don't know, there's a massive difference between trying to help the world and trying to make the world a better place, and then sacrificing a decade of your own life to not make any difference. Because if you haven't noticed, the world is still pretty environmentally damaged. So just the fact that I go 10 years trying to stop it proves how big my ego is. Just trying to I'll start a company that'll save the planet. Oh, no, Dan, that's a bit weird. And then B, just proves how small my brain is, because I should have logically known that was stupid, and at least 5 years in stopped doing it. But I was passionately about, and I still am passionate about, trying to save the planet. Not just because I have a daughter, and so it'd be nice that she has somewhere to live, but also for the other 7 billion people on the planet. It's quite important. But there you go.
But I think A, it's really important to have that dream, to have that passion, and B, I guess one thing that you can take away from it is you never know who you inspired. So maybe someone saw your hemp business, and a few years later they've been thinking about it, and that's when they've set up theirs, or they've set up now, and they've kind of hit the market at the right time, and it's boomed.
So THCC is still going, so you can still go and buy a hemp t-shirt and stuff. So don't worry, THC.co.uk, run by Gav Lawson now. So that's still going, and it's really nice. I'm at the age now where I do have people that come to me and kind of say, you did inspire me, and inspiring people is part of my gig and what I love doing. So it's really nice to get that. To be fair, I'll be honest with you, though, I would think it's really nice to get that feedback, but each time I get it, I'm really not necessarily because I'm humble, but I'm just not very good at taking the compliment. So someone comes up and like, Dan, I can't believe I read your book, man. It changed what I was doing, and now I'm doing this. And I'm like, oh, that's really kind, thanks. Let's not go on about it.
Let's move on.
Exactly. Can you autograph my book? No, not really. That's a bit sad. I'd rather not. But that's it's only happened a few times, and it's been nice for people to do. I have because I thought I was an author when I was younger. I wrote a couple of different books about entrepreneurship and about. I did this thing with type 2 diabetes. I reversed it with diet and exercise. So I wrote a book about that as well, and that's got a huge race angle to it as well. So it's, And I set up a charity trying to do retreats and trying to help people and doing all sorts of stuff. And I did a petition to change the way the government was treating type 2 diabetes, and we did all sorts of stuff. about 5 or 6 years ago. So that was again, that was another one of those social impact things where really, you know, no one asked me to do it. I just did it off my own bat because I thought I should try to change the world. I just don't learn, basically. I don't learn that I can't change the world. I just keep trying to do it. It's just
No, but what you are learning is you can, slowly but surely. It's about humans coming together, about people. You know, if you hadn't have been doing what you're doing, you know, would you have had the business for your, or would you have had the idea for the business that you've got now, which we'll come on to in a minute? And, you know, would you have met the people you have? Would you have felt the same way that you do about the world and still want to change it? So yeah, so I think
I feel better. I feel better now about what I'm doing. Okay, right. Yeah. No, it is nice.
And sometimes that's what you need.
I have had a couple of friends who've come back and they've given the book to their parents or something, and it's kind of, I know I've, you know, I have to say saved a few people's lives, but the changes they then made because of it, that has then made them last longer on the planet. So that's, to be fair, you know, and I always say, and I know it's a cliche, but if it changes one person's life, then it's worth me doing. It isn't, by the way,
it's funny you say that, because that's actually one of the kind of mottos of Dig. You know, I'll be honest, I'm 26, well, 27 on Monday, and you know, I don't always thank you, feel like I'm the most qualified person. Why should I do this? Are people going to be interested? But then I think, well, actually, if I can inspire one person just to make a little bit of a change or a difference, or take up mentoring, or feel a bit better about themselves, or maybe kind of, you know, feel more positive about their entrepreneurial goals and dreams, then we've done our job as, you know, a success. We've done it as humans. So.
Yeah, I'm now, because I'm slightly older than yourself, I'm a Piscean rather than a Leo. I'm guessing you're a Leo.
Yeah, I'm a Leo.
The hair, and you can see, I tell you, Leo. If you're into star signs, it always makes me smile with star sign stuff, because I'm not massively sure that the Chinese are into the same kind of star signs. They're into yearly ones rather than these kind of monthly ones that we do from the Greeks. But it always makes me smile. If you think about how many people are over in China versus how many people are over here, and it's like, so if you believe in star signs, well, really, like, because really the Chinese don't. So, you know, really, like, quite a few billion people don't believe in them at all. Anyway, it just always makes me smile, because of course we've got that tradition for a historical point from the West, haven't we? We don't have the, you know, and you know, half of Brazil and India and other things. Anyway, not the point being is, you look like a Leo, you act like a Leo. I'm going to say you're a Leo. So there you go. That's a guess, and that's a compliment as well, by the way.
Thank you, and you are correct.
I'm not. Everyone always thinks I am a Leo, but I'm not a Leo. I'm Piscean. But there you go. But that's a different thing at all. So yeah, no, it is about inspiring people, and if you can inspire a few, you know, great saying is, you know, if it's not going to be you, then who? And if it's not now, then when? I think, if, you know, sometimes I hold on to that kind of cliche and that saying, because if you don't make a difference, who else is going to do it? And actually, in the end, it is about individuals making a difference. Because if you can, you know, it's only those people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world that actually do. And, you know, everybody could make the difference. It's just, I'm just warning people that financially, if you go down that social impact route, you won't be as rich as other people. So just so you're aware, there is a bit of a trade-off.
Just so you know.
Just so you know, don't be as stupid as me. There is a trade-off, especially in the modern world in which we live, of, like, you know, late capitalism. There is definitely a trade-off between, you know, socioeconomic status and trying to help the planet. And, you know, that's why there's not very many rich hippies. But there you go.
Yes, we see this time and time again, don't we? And why don't you start by kind of, you know, telling us a little bit about YourFLOCK, which is your newest endeavor, and what you're trying to do there.
Yeah, so that, again, that's another one of these things where I've complete transparency of this. So because I was doing some corporate gigging around the country, and because I was getting paid relatively well to do so, because the other thing I do is I talk on television, and I talk about digital transformation. I talk about future of work stuff, and I talk about digital marketing massively, but that then melds into this remote work, hybrid work stuff. And I was kind of a prophet in the wilderness in some respects, because before COVID, I was already saying all this stuff was logically going to happen. It was a logical progression. It would happen. Yeah. And everyone was like, don't be stupid, Dan, shut your face. So I was like, well, okay, well, I think you'll find it might happen, but then blah, blah. So I was helping people start their own businesses, and I've most already helped quite a few, probably thousands of people do so. And I'd worked through different companies myself, because I'd been working with universities to do it and other people to do it, and organisations like Flying Start and NCGE and all these acronyms I could do, and help the government, past government, with some of the policies around diversity and inclusion as well, and loads of other weird and wonderful stuff. As I say, I just have the joy of being old, so I've just had a longer time on the planet to do all this stuff. rather than any kind of actual plan or scheme. Just happened to grow organically. So I'd helped quite a few people start businesses, and I was very passionate about this. And I was also gigging and talking, and I had a bit of extra money. Yeah. And what had happened is I had about 2 or is it 3 tech companies, maybe 2 tech companies by then. I've had 9 companies altogether. This is now the 10th, which is quite cool timing, because they say you need about 10 companies to become a millionaire. So I'm hoping this is the one, basically.
This is the one.
This is the one. Well, and also the new research that comes out saying that you're much more likely to succeed when you're past 45 than before. So again, I'm 46. So again, ta-da, this is the one.
This is the one.
Nothing like a good old-fashioned bit of confirmation bias. So all the articles in the world, I've taken out 2 that say 45-year-olds are okay and 10 businesses are okay. There you go. That's what I've done, and then made it that thing. So yeah. So because so the reason why I tell you this story is because I'd actually talked to a business mentor of mine, and he'd said, look, you keep riding the hype cycle. You keep doing stuff early. The hemp company was 25 years too early. You were doing stuff with algorithms and things before they were even called algorithms. You were doing all this cool and funky stuff, yeah, which is great, Dan, except you don't make very much money, because pioneers don't. You don't want to be first to market with most things anyway. My favorite saying is around, I was talking to someone on LinkedIn about this, is the pioneers are the people that get shot with the bows and arrows of discontent, or the slings and arrows of discontent. Because if you're too early to the market, like I've got a mate of mine who is obsessed with the idea of insect protein being a really good thing to feed the world with, and he's right. But if he's got to start a restaurant in London that feeds people locusts, yeah, and he might be right, except no one's going to go because it's just too early in the market. Yeah, he might be right, but the market's I don't think the market's not ready for it. Yeah. Don't get wrong.
You can still get a few customers, to be fair. I mean, I might not be one of them, because the idea of eating locusts just doesn't fill me with joy. But I do think there are, maybe you could frame it as an I'm a celebrity kind of.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's the kind of marketing he would not like. That's the whole point. He's a very purist, and he'd be like, no, because
I'm kidding.
This is da. And again, this is the same guy who I helped start an electric scooter company about 5 years ago. So it's not the fact that he's not right. He's just before the market's ready for it. And you just have to have a lot of cash to keep going in that market. It's like, we had an augmented reality company a long time ago. And because we didn't have the money, we didn't have time to ride it out. But if we'd ridden it out for the 12 years, we'd now be ahead of everybody else, because we would have been the forerunners of that community. Yeah, it's like with iPhones and Apple and all these things. Most people don't remember things like Wacom tablets and these other things, but they were a precursor before the iPhone, did all this stuff, but no one remembers them because they were seen as crap. Yeah. So Google was like the 12th search engine, for crying out loud, but no one remembers all the other ones because they just think Google was the first search engine. They were not the first search engine. In fact, most things aren't. The first people do not make the money. So, but they also need to be a pioneer as part of the process. Anyway, before I rant too much about it. So on the hype cycle of stuff, I was doing things too early. So if I had been the old me, I'd be doing stuff with NFTs and holograms and all sorts of weird stuff, and in metaverse, like a lot of my friends are. So I said no. And my business mentor said, look, all you got to do, look back at your old notepads and see the stuff you were thinking about 5 years ago, because that stuff will most probably start to kick in now, because you're normally 5 or 10 years too early. And I was like, that's a very simple.
That's not, I was going to say. Yeah.
Which I thought of it myself. Never mind. That's why mentors are important. Yeah? So that one sentence completely changed my life. So then if you believe in the kind of universe and other things, and you make your own luck by being prepared and doing stuff. So I went out networking and wasn't particularly looking for a business to invest in or looking for someone. But then I think it was the Fiverr event, and they were talking about gig economies. I might have been talking about the gig economy, but there we go. And I knew Fiverr pretty well. Fiverr a marketplace, and I'd used Fiverr for a long time. A lot of people still don't use Fiverr now, but it's a bit like, it's just a much cheaper version of subcontracting. But anyway, so I've been using it for a while. I was a massive fan, and I bumped into a chap who was there at this gig, at this entrepreneurial gig. This chap is called Michal Wisniewski, who is my business partner. And because I had a bit of extra cash, and because I tried to build something like YourFLOCK about 7 years before, I said, look, you're doing it really well. I love what you're up to. Team dynamics, values, engagement, social impact, making the world a better place. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, I'll give you some cash. I'll bugger off and do some corporate work, but I'll just be there on the sidelines, So, I kind of bought my ticket on the private plane, and my plan was to just invest and not do anything else. That was my plan. And then, just before the plane takes off, someone comes up and goes, Dan, you fly planes, don't you? I was like, yeah, but my plan was to not fly the plane.
On the sideline.
To arrive on the beach and not have to do anything and just sit here drinking champagne. They were like, well, yeah, okay, well, you love flying. And I was like, actually, no, I do love flying planes. Oh, yeah, I said, yeah, why not? I'll be co-pilot. Exactly, like I've only flown 9 planes and 2 of them into a mountain. No, but I'll be co-pilot. So yeah, so me and Michal are now co-founders of YourFLOCK. YourFLOCK is the team engagement platform which works on values and individual values, and it's a really nice tool to use to help your team stay together for longer. It works in team dynamics and has a bit of machine learning in the background and some other cool and funky stuff. But what it does, especially for law firms, it allows them to keep their talent for longer. And law firms especially say we've worked out the averages now on the 6-month team togetherness program, saves them about £120,000 a year. And actually, one client is now saying he thinks it's up to £300,000, but that's then again, that's I'm not arguing against him because it's actually in our favour, but we know it's 120. He thinks it's 300 for his company, which is great. I work for NDA reasons, won't mention.
Happy client, happy days.
Well, absolutely, because YourFLOCK costs about £3,000. So, it's a very scalable SaaS product, and it allows people to become better team managers and teaches people about not only about values, but also about themselves, and also gets the people in your team to give feedback on those values to the leader, so the leader then can change the team. If that makes sense. Yeah,
so it's quite similar to kind of using some of the psychometric testing sort of principles and bringing people together. And I don't know if anyone's used Insights or the Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs. So I was obsessed with Myers-Briggs, Belbin, Insights, DISC, all these things like 10 or 12, 15 years ago. So I was teaching entrepreneurs to do this. And so I wanted to build, it was called Macaulay in the first instance. It wasn't called YourFLOCK. But actually, I invested in it because I wanted entrepreneurs to get hold of this tool. So then the first teams they created, would have been really, really strong and been about values and about clever stuff. Then you use Belbin and Insights on top of it. So I was just obsessed with this kind of psychometric testing area. And it just so happened that I met Michal. And the double irony of YourFLOCK is I'd failed to build YourFLOCK 7 years ago because I couldn't get the right team together to build YourFLOCK, which is about team dynamics. That proves how bad I am. So it was scratching my own itch.
Proves how much you needed the product.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, that's the thing. So I used the product first. So before investing in it, I used the product, and then a very, very close person to me also used the product. And if they had listened to what YourFLOCK said, they would have saved £120,000 that year, because a partner in that law firm then left, and YourFLOCK had literally highlighted this person is likely to leave. And then they did, and they took another couple of people with them, and it cost them more than £120,000, almost took the business under. So once I realized how powerful it was, and Michal is the brains behind it, and it's based on Stanford and Google methodologies and some other clear, very, very, I mean, we've had 12 learning development people work on it. We've got an amazing board. And then we've got machine learning that's been done by Inevitable behind it as well. It's a very powerful desktop product. I'm very proud of what Michal's done. It's just the fact that I just happened to turn up at the right time, and then just have a bit of cash, and so gave him some cash and gave him some pointers and whatever. But now, I'm now flying the plane with him. It's a very exciting time.
Oh, amazing. And it sounds absolutely exciting. And I think, it sounds like a really useful tool, especially to perhaps some of the bigger conglomerates and our bigger law firms that are, will have lots of people, lots of different dynamics, but even the smaller ones, because if anything, those relationships are even more crucial if you haven't got the people. So
absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. It works out better for smaller companies, not massive ones, because the massive ones have processes and HR and these other things in place, but the smaller ones, because they don't have that, and also those, as you rightly said, the team dynamics and the value of those interpersonal relationships are so much more valuable for a small team that's growing, and they've got to get it right from the beginning. So if you've got 10 people up to about 50, that is our sweet spot of where YourFLOCK does the best work. It does amazing stuff. Also, between me and you, because of COVID happening and because people are now going hybrid and remote work, it actually means that YourFLOCK is even more useful, because you're not in the office space all together at the same time. You're working from home, I work from home. Lots of people work from home. I think
you don't actually get to interact with each other as much as you did, and even just that. Oh, should we go for a bite to eat after work? Oh, should we grab lunch together? All those interactions just don't happen as often anymore, do they?
No, they don't. And we've got to be conscious about the fact that they don't, and we've got to realise they don't. And I think we're in this kind of strange area at the moment where managers are office managers in particular, obviously they don't have an office to manage anymore. And then even team leaders are all kind of like, oh, I don't know why people are leaving. Well, the reason why they're leaving is because you don't have that forced together community creation and culture creation, which is what the office did. Now, I'm a great believer and a staunch believer in remote work and hybrid working, not only for environmental reasons, because if only half of us did remote work, it takes off 6 million cars off the road a year, which environmental impact that alone is way beyond me having a hemp company, for 10 years. Like it's just way beyond it. It's just by a multiple, it's just wasted a decade of my life. I could have just waited to now and persuaded everyone to do remote work instead. It would have been much better for the environment. But anyway, never mind. But also for diversity and inclusion points of view. And again, it's not just because diversity and inclusion is the morally and socially right thing to do. It's because it actually makes better businesses. They're more creative. They're more to show you innovation. It's the reason why we're so heavily into it with YourFLOCK and the work I've done with the Manchester Publicity Association. All these things are happening because it's a better business. And the better businesses will survive. And what we're going to have very, very soon is a big issue with productivity. Because employment engagement rates are dropping, because people are working in different places, we're going to have a massive problem in this country, which is people don't like working. Okay. Now, a lot of people work in jobs they don't like. And that means they don't work as hard. And that means they're not as productive. And also means they're disengaged. Now, the latest stats of this are just scary. Like 85% of people are disengaged at work, which means they're not actively engaged. 85%, right? Which is insane. Now, if you're a manager, you should be very, very scared, because you're also included in this 85%. And this is what we always believe about, about bosses and managers. But they're included in this 85%. So your boss might not like being a boss. Your boss's boss might not even like being the boss of the company anymore because of the Great Resignation. Everyone might be trying to leave. Yeah, and this is the thing that we're finding. Of course, you'll know in recruitment, this is why very
I was going to say, working recruitment, you know about these things.
you might have an inkling around this thing. It'd be fascinating to know, because you guys are the bellwether. But I mean, I could get very geeky about the thing. But one of the big reasons that people leave, and again, you work in recruitment, so you'll know. But the data seems to be because if people don't feel they belong in a company, then they leave the company. Yeah, so a lot of recruiters and a lot of people in law, a lot of other folk, especially when they're very technical, they believe it's just about money. And they go, oh, we pay people more money and they stay. Well, yeah, but they do, but they only stay for 3 months and then they still leave. Yeah, or they then use that as a bargaining tool to get more money from somewhere else, but they still leave. And also, 100%. Every job has a finite amount of money you can pay them. I mean, I know that from a startup point of view. You can't pay yourself.
Can't just keep going up and up and up.
We just can't. I mean, at some point, it doesn't make any sense.
But it's true. There is statistics around counter offers, for example. Someone comes to you and says they want, or someone comes to their boss, says they want to leave, and get counter offered with more money, like you said. Or sometimes, the business will look at adjusting a couple of things, maybe giving them more flex work, maybe giving them a couple of other incentives. But within 6 months, they're either back on the market or they've left.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more common that,
But this
9 out of 10 will have left him within 6 months.
Because it's already too late. It's the same principle like in a personal relationship. Like, if you don't really like, you've fallen out with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever, and the partnership's kind of, and then they come, oh, here's some flowers, and you're like, oh, that's really kind. But that doesn't change it,
Fix the issue.
It doesn't fix the deeper issues. Like, you might not share the same values. That's exactly what YourFLOCK shows a team. Do they share the same values? Where don't they? And if that's the case, then what is the problem? And how can we make a great example is I'm not particularly in my own personal mindset, I'm not particularly flexible. Yeah. But my team is very flexible. And as I'm going to manage those people, I need to learn to become more flexible and not be so rigid, because otherwise I'm just going to piss them all off. Yeah. Because I say, you have to do that by this time, blah, 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 and it's just going to not work. Yeah. But I didn't know that until I did my YourFLOCK test and everyone else did it. And I realized I had to become more adaptable. And so the YourFLOCK then gave me exercises to do so I could become more adaptable. Like, for example, turning up to the train station and not knowing where I was going to go, but going somewhere for a day holiday, but not knowing where I was going to go. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really worked for me. So I've never in my life have I turned up to a train station not knowing exactly where I'm going at the time. Yeah. So I turned up. And I went to the beach. I went to near Blackpool, and I've never been to that place before. And it was absolutely beautiful. It was a beautiful, fun, fantastic day. But the adaptability.
And you got a beach. It weren't quite Mexico, but you got a beach.
Exactly. That's the way I looked at it. I thought,
so be careful what you ask for, because
beach in Mexico, beach in Mexico, beach in Mexico. Yeah, because there's lots of different
Pacific.
Really specific, absolutely. West Coast on this thing. That's what it is. Anyway, yeah. So it teaches that kind of thing. So there's lots and lots of different exercises. Okay, we had 12 different learning development people and psychologists work on these activities that you can do inside your flock. So your flock can not only work just on a mapping tool to show you those differences, but also then helps people become more aligned with the team, with the different activities it does, which helps people feel like they're more engaged with the workforce or their team. But also that feeling of belonging is hugely important. You know, like I think it was something like the newest report is if you're under 35, I think it's 1 in 4 people like don't think they belong at work. They don't feel they belong. Yeah. Now 1 in 4 is quite a lot. Now if it goes over that, when you get to my kind of age, it's like 1 in 5, but still 1 in 5 is a lot. Yeah?
Still quite a lot.
Yeah, still very high. Yeah? And so people,
if you think about a company of what, 20 people, that's a quarter of your workforce.
Yeah, quarter of your workforce. Plus, on top of that, you've got how many people are engaged or not engaged. Yeah, you've got like at least half your workforce that aren't really engaged at work at all. Plus, a quarter of them don't feel that they belong. And then everyone's going, well, why are people leaving? Well, we've just had a pandemic, which has then created a feeling of uncertainty, and everyone's worried about the future, but everyone also knows the fragility of life. Now, that is going to make you're going to leave. Now, a lot of people, this is even worse. A lot of people don't leave, but they become disengaged and actively disengaged at work. So then you get this thing where people are working from home but not doing any work because they hate their job, and they're just trying to blag the manager who can't see them anyway. No one knows each other. We don't know what the values are. No one cares about each other, and your manager also wants to leave because it's a crap time to be a manager. So what we've got to do is help management become better, become leaders rather than managers. That's number one. You become empathetic, get feedback, change what you do, change how you work with the team dynamics. Make sure you care about people enough to listen to them and then actively do something. You know, these are not overly complicated, but you know, it's something.
No, they're not overly complicated either. You know, it's just going back to basics. We're all human. We all need to be listened to, and we all need that opportunity to share our, whether it's feelings or emotions or dreams or hopes. You know, we all need that platform. And I think
absolutely. And normally, as you say, and whether you work in a good place or not, you might have the fact that you do that interpersonally, you know, over a drink or over some food or over coffee or whatever. But it's not very likely you're going to do it with your boss. Like, again, there's some horrible statistics out about how many people can't share mental health problems with their boss or feel they can't share mental health problems with the boss. Again, huge pandemic in this country and beyond. By the way, when I say that, I'm saying this country because we mainly work as YourFLOCK, we mainly work in the UK, about 80% of our stuff. But this is, you know, everywhere else. And one of the biggest issues is just managers, and I say the word man really particularly there, managers particularly, especially of an old school kind of variety in this new world, who aren't empathetic, who don't listen, who don't care, that aren't flexible, that don't do all this stuff. They're going to find this world a very, very difficult place to live, because most people, as you know, leave a bad boss and they leave bad managers. You know, they don't necessarily leave bad jobs. They just say, I just don't like working there. Why? And if you really drill into it, most of the time it's not about money, because after about 40 or 60,000 pounds, it's not about money anyway. Because intrinsically, they've proven that happiness doesn't increase more because you get paid more money. It just doesn't. You just buy more stuff and then you just get more stressed. So, you know, it doesn't work out, which is why for, you know, a decade I try to help people start their own businesses, because I think that's a much better way of making people happy. However, it's not the only way. You can also make them happier at work. They can still be happier at work, and if you can that's the plan of YourFLOCK, to make 1 million people be happier at work. And the reason why I get so passionate about it is because if you help 1 million people be happier at work, we spend like a ridiculous amount of time at work. Yeah,
80% of our time that we're awake.
I mean, if not more, mentally.
Or about 70, but mentally, exactly.
Exactly. I'd say
we don't want to know the statistics of that. Like, how do you go above 100 if
don't even know. Especially I run your own business, it's 120%, so it gets a bit spooky. But again, and I'm not going to contemplate the difference between entrepreneurship and burnout rates and all these other things, because it's a very tricky area. Because if you're passionate about something, you can still become stressed. And this is one of the bits of toxic positivity I used to do. And I used to say, if you're passionate about it and it's your own business, you can work as hard and work forever because you're passionate about it and you think. And that is not true, because you're a human being and that you will burn out, as I proved myself by doing so. But I was passionate whilst I was burning out. So I was very engaged in the business. Let's put it that way. You know, because it's my own and because I can control my destiny. And really what people want is autonomy, mastery and purpose, as Daniel Pink rightly says in his book Drive. But underneath all that, there's something deeper, which is making sure that team leaders can get to know their team and get the feedback they need. And we can't blame bad managers, by the way. And you know, sometimes it feels like I'm blaming people, but Those people who are bad managers are only bad managers because we've never given them the tools and the time to become better. And in this next bit, either the next generation will be naturally better, just like we had with digital divide, and we had the, you don't have to, most young people are social media managers by their very nature, but I was teaching people how to do social media, 10 years ago. And it was lots of old men, white men sitting there going, well, why would I tweet? Why would I go on LinkedIn? I don't want to talk about anything. But now, obviously, everyone knows the power of the personal brand. So the next generation, won't have to persuade them that maybe they should do a blog, because I've already written 10 already, or 20.
They're already on it.
They're already doing it. So I'd have to say, oh, by the way, maybe you should tweet. Talk about
maybe you should stop writing blogs, because
maybe just do some video stuff. I'm already on TikTok.
Be some different.
Well, this is how old I am. You see, this is the beauty of being old. Is this next generation will be doing stuff, and I was teaching people.
And you're older, not old. Stop saying that.
I'm okay. I'm very happy to own old. I'm very happy with it. But
you're not old.
Older. But I was teaching people about YouTube and doing that kind of stuff. And by the time it's my daughter now plays on Roblox and those kind of things. It's in the metaverse, and that's what she's used to doing. So her future, I mean, even her future right now is she's making stuff that she's trying to sell in the metaverse, which to me is mind blowing. But that's the same as my dad being mind blown by YouTube and saying, well, you can't make money out of YouTube. But that's the same as my granddad being mind blown by footballers and saying, you can't make money being a footballer. Get down the line. It's just different generations. So I suppose what I'm trying to get to this is that generational gap that we're noticing more and more. I think that's going to become more and more acute as leaders and as managers don't listen to the next generation, not because it's the next generation, it's because they're not listening to anybody. That's the problem here. And there is a direct correlation between the lack of diversity in the management team and their desire to get you back into the office. Yeah. Now, that's why I believe in remote work and working from home, because it opens the door to millions of people who would not normally either feel comfortable going to an office, and I consider myself to be one of those people. I've worked in predominantly white spaces and they're not always comfortable. People thinking it's okay that they touch your hair, etc. It's not, only now.
I can assure you I have been there, and it's
absolutely.
Is it just me, or honestly sometimes? And to be fair, if someone asks first and they ask first, and it is one of those, and you can tell it's genuine, it can be okay. And I get it, they've never, I think it does depend on context a little bit. But then even at the idea of, asking that question, or sometimes just the language, or just the automatic go for it, just feel almost like you're being petted like a dog. Like, can I touch your hair? Like you would with a dog. I have a big personal point on that, and I completely agree with you.
Well, I always use it. It's a very visceral reaction, and understandably, it's a big thing. But there's loads of microaggressions and loads of systems that are in place, and loads of stuff which people sometimes unconsciously do, or consciously do, or unconsciously do.
Yeah.
The point is that but even things like people don't have very much time. But if you were working async, and if you were working on objective based, and if you're working from home, you can do 2 hours on, 2 hours off. You could easily do, little Jimmy's being a pain, well, cool, turn my machine off and I'll come back to work later on, which is what we've started to do in working from home, which means, young mums and single parents and all these people that were,
people who have, because there's a lot of people, like you said, like young mums, single parents, people with a disability, people who, weren't necessarily born with a disability, but then had a life-changing injury and couldn't go back into the office and are left out of work. And now they can get back into work. There's just so many options for people. And I think, absolutely amazing.
This is what's so exciting about it, because it allows, even if it's not a huge number of, percentage-wise, a number of people, but that diversity enriches the business anyway. And it allows then for I was reading today, this is something that tech teams have known for a very long time, but neurodiverse people being in the business. And by the way, I count myself as neurodiverse. I think everyone actually technically is, but that's a different.
I agree. Everybody, we'll need a whole other segment for that.
Absolutely, but, that's fine. It's worth delivering, but worth delivering with someone who actually knows an awful lot more about it than I do. So with the neurodiverse thing, I think tech teams have always been a good place for neurodiversity anyway. Certainly from my experience, but also the most successful tech teams that I know are themselves neurodivergent, but also that's like the special secret sauce that they have in tech is the fact that neurodiverse opinions of thought and abilities makes tech teams better, and it makes better technology. And it has done, you know, Google knew this, Facebook. I mean, everyone, you know, anyone who works in proper high up tech knows that if you don't have someone who's neurodiverse on the team, you haven't got a very good team anyway. And also, if you haven't got someone who's, you know, deeply in the spectrum, so to speak, or on a spectrum, again, same principle. It's the same principles all the time, yeah? Because it's their special power, that their ability to do stuff you can't do is it's a bonus. You know, the fact that they don't want to come out to the pub, so what? Just shut up. It doesn't make any difference. They're a great data scientist. Leave them the fuck alone. You know, just, you know, it's that kind of thing. So that's what remote work and working from home allows us to do. And I think that's why I'm get so excited about it and with it, which is, of course, you know, it's part of what your flock allows you to do. If you can recruit on values, then you're not looking at the obvious stuff that people sometimes use in recruitment, or especially when they recruit without a recruiter. They'll recruit friends of friends, you know, and they'll find someone down the pub who wants to leave that company, and they'll go and get drunk with them, and then they wonder why, you know, 90% of their workforce are people they've met in the pub and that are white mates of theirs who, you know, all went to Oxford and Cambridge. Well, that's why, and they go, oh, well, we can't find other people. Well, no, that's a lie. You've never made the effort. And also, some of the stuff that you do, and you know much more about it than I do, you know, it creates barriers for people to do it anyway. So they wouldn't even apply because of how the language you use in the bloody CV, or, you know, anything. You know, there's so many of these things. And this is why you need specialists in diversity and inclusion. This is why you need specialists in all this stuff, but not just because it taps you into a better market. It's because it creates better companies. This is what it's really important. It's a bottom line condition. It's not a nice to have. And I think in the next few years in future work, it might become a must have. You know, the companies that don't do it are going to not be resilient enough and are going to go under. But also the companies 100%. That don't have nice cultures are also going to go to the wall, because people won't work for them for long. And it's going to cost too much to have a huge, I mean, the employee turnover in some of the industries at the moment it's not sustainable. But you cannot employ 3 or 4 people for that one position without being rude about it, but just in recruitment fees alone. You can't do it. You just can't sustain it.
No, I'll be honest with you, it's not sustainable. And it's not sustainable for the business either, because you've got to bear in mind, you know, it depends on the position, of course, but that person comes in, they're liaising with other people, they're trying to do a job at the same time, you know, and within a couple of months they've gone. You've then hired someone else, you're introducing that person, you know, and everyone's losing confidence in that area of business at the same time. So, you know, when you get to your 3rd and 4th person, say it's in a 2-year period, you know, you do find sometimes in a company and they go, actually, I don't know who deals with that. Let me just go and find out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, that shouldn't happen. So I think it does cost them a lot. And I agree with you. I think the ones that aren't making strides, that aren't putting things in place in terms of D&I and actually getting the right people in to their business, they're going to find themselves not as profitable and not as productive as the ones that are.
Yeah, you know, I think that might well be the thing that makes the difference in your business. I think we've all been looking at business in and I might be completely wrong with hyperinflation and other things on the horizon. Everyone might, you know, run back into the offices and everyone might panic and everyone might do whatever. But I have a feeling that the genie is out the bottle with the old work from home and the remote working. But the thing is, because the main thing is that productivity went up, it didn't go down. You know, it wasn't fair enough if we weren't doing good jobs, but we're actually doing better jobs. Because we do
more hours.
Yeah, well, again, I'm going
to another time for that one. But
at least productivity went up. It's the question would be is why did it go up, and is it sustainable that it keeps at these levels? But the real deep thing is it's the people that are engaged at work that do most of the work, and the people that are disengaged at work don't do as much. And if you don't know who's disengaged in your company, and you don't know their values, and you don't know more about them, then you've got to question why you're the leader or the boss, because that actually is that's your main job, is to do that. You know, just like a football manager who doesn't play football, but actually his job is to surely inspire those to do so and to kick the ball in the net, from what I can gather. But each of those teams, without using I was bad at it around netball or something else, but I now have it must be the same principles. Point being is if you're the manager of a team of any sport, then you don't always have to have played that, but also you don't this thing
But you
about
need to be a good manager and inspire.
This is no, exactly this thing about family-owned business, especially when you're the CEO and then you're doing the rest of it. It's a bit like being a football manager or a team netball manager or whatever, and then jumping on the pitch yourself and deciding that you've got to play striker, or you've got to be the most important person on the pitch. And it's like you were the manager before, and now all of a sudden it's my ball, I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with it. It's like, well, that's not how management really should be. Anyway, that's the difference between, I suppose, being a player manager, but also in leadership roles. And I think that's what the main thing I think we've got to think about in the future is how do we become better leaders? How do we use things like YourFLOCK to help us with the data and feedback that we need? But more importantly, how do we bring diversity and inclusion into it more? Because actually, even though it might be a bit uncomfortable for us, we make better teams when not everyone's the same as we are.
I agree. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me today and telling everyone about YourFLOCK and talking a little bit about D&I strategy as well. It's been such a good chat. So yeah, thanks for your time, Dan.
No, thank you. And then if you want to find out, everyone wants to find out more about YourFLOCK, it's just at www.yourflock.co.uk. So it's very easy to find. But most probably best thing to do though is to get in contact with yourself, and then you get them in contact with me. And if we can, we'll give them some kind of discount. Or we'll do some kind of dig discount because you found us do that.
Well, I would be happy to support that. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, please do get in touch with me and I will get you introduced and passed on to Dan.